makes his presence felt in the election campaign. Tariffs coming for the auto sector. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
The answers you need
from the people in the know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
It was only a matter of time. It was only a matter of time until Donald Trump made an even bigger impact on this election campaign than he already has. Trump and his team have been vowing that reciprocal tariffs would be coming April 2nd. That's next Wednesday. And it's a day all the political leaders already had circled on their calendars. But Trump didn't wait. Speaking in the Oval Office yesterday, the U.S. president announced his administration will impose 25% tariffs on all vehicles imported into the United States. Those tariffs set to go in effect next Wednesday.
For doing business in our country and taking our jobs, taking our wealth, taking a lot of things that they've been taking over the years. They've taken so much out of our country, friend and foe, and frankly, friend has been oftentimes much worse than foe. And this is very modest. And what we're going to be doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff. We started off with a 2.5% base, which is what we were at, and we go to 25%.
Trump has been talking about hitting Canada's auto sector with tariffs for months. Tariffs were supposed to come into effect March 6th, but then that decision was reversed and a 30-day pause was announced after outcry from the car companies. When asked if he's spoken with the CEOs of the big three, Trump said he has and predicted plants would be moving out of Canada and Mexico and to the United States.
It depends on whether or not they have factories here. I can tell you, if they have factories here, they're thrilled. If you don't have factories here, they're going to have to get going and build them because otherwise they have to pay tariffs. Very simple. And most of those have pretty big factories here, like General Motors has big factories here. They're going to move their parts divisions back to the United States because some of them were made in Canada and some of them were made in Mexico and other places. They'll be moving their parts division back to the United States in factories where they may be at 60% capacity, so they don't even really have to build too much of a factory. But, generally speaking, if they have factories here, plants here, where they make their cars and equipment, but they make their cars here, they are thrilled.
So as you can imagine, immediate reaction to that news from the leaders of the political parties here in Canada running in the election campaign. Liberal leader and Prime Minister Mark Carney spoke to reporters in Kitchener before attending a campaign rally and called Trump's actions a direct attack on Canada.
The very workers that I stood in front of, uniform workers I stood in front of this morning at the Ambassador Bridge. A bridge that is a symbol and a reality up until now of the tight ties between our two countries, ties of kinship, ties of commerce, ties that are in the process of being broken.
Later at his rally in Kitchener, he said the Americans are no longer our friends.
Now, we know we've got some issues with our American neighbors. No longer friends, no longer friends. I know. I'm going to come back to that. And we're going to deal with them in a second. But the first thing we said is, look, what we have to do is reduce our reliance on them, look for new markets. So in my first week, I went to Paris and London to strengthen our trade partnerships with Europe and the UK, and that's what we're doing.
Speaking in Quebec City, where he was campaigning yesterday, Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre said Canada needs to retaliate against these tariffs and said Canada would be there for auto workers.
You're afraid right now. You're anxious. You wonder how you're going to pay your mortgage or put food on the table. You're thinking about the conversations you may need to have with your little children about whether they can register for next year's hockey or this summer's soccer. You don't know if you'll be able to stay in the same city or what's going to happen to your future. Canada will be there for you. We will be there for you.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was in London, Ontario when the news broke, and he vowed Canada would fight back.
We are never going to be the 51st state. Not now, not ever. As a party founded by working people, we're going to fight for the workers. We're going to put working people first, not the billionaires, not the millionaires, not the CEOs, working people first.
So we are expecting to hear a lot more from the three main party leaders throughout the day, probably all three of them within the next couple of hours. Mark Carney was supposed to be campaigning in Quebec today. Instead, he is back in Ottawa and is right now meeting with some of his cabinet ministers. The latest we are told is that he'll have a news conference or at least make some remarks in about an hour and 20 minutes. We know that Pierre Poilievre has moved on from Quebec and has taken the campaign, the Conservative campaign, out to British Columbia. He has a news conference scheduled for 10:30 Pacific time. So again, in about an hour and 20 minutes from now in Coquitlam, British Columbia. And Jagmeet Singh is scheduled to have a news conference around the same time. He is in Windsor, Ontario, meeting with auto workers there. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
With our friend on the right side of things, Michael Taube, syndicated columnist and speechwriter for former Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Welcome back.
Hey, Rob. How are you doing today?
I'm just great. Another big news story today is Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is attending an event in the United States. It features Ben Shapiro and Dennis Prager, two very well-known right-wing media personalities, very much in the MAGA sphere, I would say. Danielle Smith has faced a lot of criticism for an interview that she did as well with Breitbart, another right-wing news outlet in the United States, and she stands accused of being a traitor to Canada. So she made some remarks yesterday. We're going to play them here in the Alberta legislature. Roll the tape, David.
Premiers were all encouraged by each other, as well as by the former Prime Minister and his ministers, to visit the U.S., to get on U.S. media, to speak with every U.S. official and influencer we could to convince the U.S. President to refrain from imposing these tariffs. It was all about working as Team Canada for the greater good. Enter Liberal Prime Minister Mark Carney. Now, all of a sudden, it's apparently treason to talk to American media personalities that we disagree with. It is disloyal to try and persuade high-profile Republicans holding influence with the President to abandon his tariff policies on Canada. Indeed, it's a high crime to try and convince U.S. officials to refrain from imposing tariffs until after our country has elected a leader with a strong mandate. Shame on all who dare to speak with the enemy, they now say. These are the Team Carney and NDP talking points. Their endgame is quite obvious. Frighten and divide Canadians. Try and make Canadians forget the utter incompetence of Liberal and NDP policies that have been inflicted on this country over the last 10 years.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. Question for Michael Taube.
Sure.
Is Danielle Smith a traitor?
Of course not. It's nonsense. I mean, she explained herself well in the clip that you played, but I mean, I think you can lighten it this way, or you can highlight it this way. The end result is she's absolutely right. You are in the midst of this tariff battle, or war, if you'd like, that we're in with the United States. You have to speak to as much media as possible. The natural place to go is American media. And to be fair, Danielle Smith has actually spoken on Fox Business. I believe she was on Fox News as well. She has gone on to American cable to do it, and there is nothing wrong with speaking with, or whatever, with Ben Shapiro, Dennis Prager, and others. It should be noted that the list you brought up, Rob, that Ben Shapiro has actually basically come out against the tariff war as well. There was a clip of him that circulated, I forget, a week or two ago, which actually showed that he questioned what was going on, and that Canada is a friend and they shouldn't be heading in that direction. So if you want to put Shapiro, Prager, and others in the MAGA camp, which, I mean, some fit, some don't, but we don't have to get into an argument about that. Some of them are realizing that, you know, tariffs that U.S. President Donald Trump uses, the tariffs tend to be a bargaining chip. It tends to be a way that he makes himself known. He did this during his first presidential administration. He's doing it now. The difference, obviously, now is that he's using it for what seems to be, at least on the surface, greater goals, unless the whole thing is just when the U.S., Canada, and Mexico renew their agreement or revitalize their agreement, reform their agreement, or whatever they ultimately do in a few months' time, it could be used as something much, much bigger in that effect. But to go back to your original question, no, Danielle Smith is not a traitor, and that's not because she and I have known each other and been friends for many years. It is not traitorous to speak to other media. It is not traitorous to speak to the U.S. media. And a lot of Canadians really need to just shake their heads, because the way that they're handling certain things, and frustrations aside, and we know there's lots of frustrations going on with this battle over tariffs, this is just a ridiculous line of thought. She can speak to whoever she wants.
Let me ask you this then. Is she a separatist?
Oh, good God.
Does she want to pull Alberta out of Canada?
No, she does not. There's no history of it. And I'm not angry at you. I'm just saying this line of thought has been going on for years.
All right.
You know, unfortunately, look, there's a lot of mythology that exists with right-leaning people, and I'm part of it too. All these things about the hidden myths. We heard it during the campaigns of Jean Chrétien, Paul Martin, and others. We're just that the Conservatives are, you know, they always plan certain things to do something else. They're always thinking 4 or 5 steps ahead of themselves in spite of what they're saying right now. I mean, look, 2 federal elections, 2004 and 2006, ran on that whole thing about the hidden myth. It worked for Paul Martin and the Liberals the first time, although they only got a minority government. It certainly did not work the second time when my old friend and boss Stephen Harper and the Conservatives got their first minority government. The end result is she's not a separatist. Yes, obviously, a lot of people look at the line of thought of Alberta first being somehow tied with it, because that's an obvious thing outside of the province. But of course, it's nonsense. She's never believed in separation. She believes in a stronger Canada, like most Conservatives do. She believes that Alberta's place in the country has to be of primary importance because that's where she's based. That's the premier of the province. That's where she represents the province. That is understandable because any other premier would do the same thing. The fact that she puts Alberta's interests above others, it should be the same for any premier. Ontario Premier Doug Ford puts his province's interests ahead of others. Scott Moe in Saskatchewan, et cetera, et cetera. And that's realistic. That's what they were elected for. That's what they're supposed to do. They represent that province. So no, Danielle Smith is not a separatist. So any of the mockery and nonsense that goes on about her, look, it's fair game. Obviously, it's politics. You can say and do whatever you want, but you need to back it up. There is nothing to back it up. So the answer is no.
Okay, when we come back, we'll talk a little more big picture about the election campaign. Back with Michael Taube, syndicated columnist and speechwriter for former Prime Minister Stephen Harper. According to most of the polling firms, if not all of the polling firms now, the Liberals are in the lead, and it's the Conservatives slightly behind, the New Democrats way behind. Poilievre at a lead, and it's sometimes a very big one, 25, 30 points at some point for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Here we are, we're 5 days into this election campaign. It's not looking good for the Conservative campaign right now. And did Pierre Poilievre blow this election campaign for the Conservatives? What would you say?
Hardly. The election campaign, as you said, is only 5 days old. And although it is a short campaign, I agree, there's lots of time to recover. And if the polls remain close, as they do, there are a lot of factors still to come. But let's be realistic about it. He didn't blow this election campaign. It's much the same way that the Liberals didn't improve upon their standing. It was unfortunately U.S. President Donald Trump and his tariff threats, and the fact that people, including a lot of the critics of Pierre Poilievre, and I've written about this before, tried to tie him together with Donald Trump. They had done this in the past. They tried to, and it was unsuccessful. It worked this time because they linked it all behind tariffs, which is really what the Liberals are trying to fight this election on, because they have a weak, politically inexperienced leader, the new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, who, again, I've written this a fair number of times. I have to keep repeating myself. This man actually really does not understand politics. He does not understand how to speak in front of crowds. He does not understand how to handle reporters' questions. He cannot keep his ego in check. He cannot keep his tongue in check. He is arrogant. He's everything that you should.
But he's winning. But he's winning.
But he's winning. Yeah, because unfortunately what has happened is in the conditions as of right now, And again, we'll see what happens on Election Day on April 28th. But as of right now, he is winning simply because that momentum from some of the things I talked about is still working to his advantage. I think as things go along in this campaign and as more is revealed, which I am writing about and speaking about, and others are too, it'll be at least harder if nothing else. I should also point that the way the polls currently stand, if we just take equals out of the equation, if you look at it, the numbers are within margin of error on most polls or a little bit above and beyond on the others. It is still very tight. It is unfortunate that it's very tight. It is astonishing that it changed. But again, and I said this with you, I've said this with others, I've been saying this for over a year and a bit, I'm not surprised the polls became tighter. You're right. The numbers did hit about a 20 to 25 point gap, but the Conservatives well out in front for at least 6 months, if not a little bit more, and they had a double-digit lead for well over a year. If you look at all that, you would say, well, it's just rolling along. Sure, but some of that was related and was always related to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, or the now former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Basically, the fact that most people realized that he was an ineffective, mediocre leader, and as time went along, more Canadians realized it, and that's why there was this crazy gap. The gap was always going to narrow. Anybody who thought otherwise, or anybody who ever said this on radio shows, TV shows, columns, etc., were not worth their weight in salt and should never have been employed, because that was nonsense and everybody knew it. When Trudeau left the equation, things changed, and that was always going to be the case. The problem is that, unfortunately, Donald Trump and his tariffs changed it even more, because that was a part of the equation that nobody saw coming. That he was going to put on tariffs, we absolutely knew. We knew just before he actually became president for the second time, became the 47th president of the United States in January, he revealed the past November that it was forthcoming. We also knew that he had used tariffs before in his first administration, as I said earlier in this interview, so that wasn't shocking. So that's what's happening here. So no, Pierre Poilievre hasn't blown it. The election is still going. There is a long way yet to go, and there's lots of time to make it up. So no, it's not over, ladies and gentlemen.
Not over. Okay, April 28th, the only poll that counts, I guess, as they say, right, Mike? Great to hear from you today. Speak soon. Bye-bye. Yeah, Michael Taube, syndicated columnist, speechwriter for former Prime Minister Stephen Harper.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio. The Newsday Panel.
Gang's all here. Day 5 of the federal election campaign. Time for the Newsday Panel. Nick McRoberts back with us from Hill and Knowlton. Hello there, Nick.
Hi, Rob.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Oh, good, good. Ariella Kimmel is president at Winston-Wilmot. Hello, Ariella.
Hi.
How are you?
How are you?
Yeah,
Good,
great to hear
good.
from everyone. Good to hear. Yep. Okay. So now that Donald Trump has gone and done the inevitable and inserted himself even more into this election campaign, let's kind of game plan this. Who gains the advantage here? Ariella?
I think there is a slight upper hand towards Carney because he can appear to be he is the prime minister, so he can look more prime ministerial. He can do, a meeting today with the premiers and a photo op with them all around. And his cabinet ministers are obviously active on the file as well. So it does give them a bit of an upper hand. But I do think Pierre at this one is doing the right thing. He yesterday said the right thing. He was out looking prime ministerial and showing voters that if elected, he can take on the role.
Okay. Nick, who has the advantage right now because of this latest news from the Oval Office?
Well, I think first it's important to say, right, that none of us wish we were in this situation, right? We don't want to be defining our partisan politics on trade wars with the U.S. But I will invoke a text that I got from a conservative last night that says that this all makes, Carney look more like a prime minister and more like someone that Canadians can elect. I think Pierre does tend to strike the right tone around banding together and making sure that this is about Canada. But Mark Carney and the government have the upper hand just by nature that they are the government and they are the ones making decisions during a campaign about this.
Well, I would say it's a huge advantage. I think it's a big advantage. I don't think it's a slight advantage. It's Mark Carney. It's Mark Carney who can say, my government, this is very urgent. I'm canceling my campaigning through Quebec and I'm dashing back to Ottawa and I'm having meeting. I'm doing government stuff because I'm already the prime minister and I've talked to the premiers and I'll have a premier's meet. All of this stuff. Pierre Poilievre can't do any of that. Pierre Poilievre can only say, this is what I would do if I was the prime minister. To me, that's just a huge advantage for Mark Carney. Ariella, sorry, go ahead.
No, I do think he has the huge advantage, but at some point Carney does have to go back on the campaign trail. And he's in the leadership, he was really bubble wrapped. And now that he can't be in a general election, we are seeing gaffe after gaffe. So while I do think this is an upper hand for him, when he's out in doing announcements, he doesn't look comfortable with the tradespeople. And it's this difference between him and Pierre, like Pierre does, and it comes more naturally. It looks like, he couldn't remember the name of his own candidate and a horrific massacre she was
that was terrible.
He is unwilling to answer questions about his time at Brookfield and any of his conflicts of interest. And frankly, like every time he's answering media, he gets aggressive and angry and annoyed with them for asking questions. And especially, yesterday he was answering a French question and stopped in the middle and said, "Oh, screw it," and started answering in English. Like, that's just not going to work.
Okay. Anything to add there, Nick?
Well, I mean, I'll just say that he's appealing to the issues that matter to voters, right? When Canada-U.S. relations is listed at the top of a rank of voting issues, he's the one that's standing in front of auto workers yesterday and then flying back to Ottawa tonight to deal with auto tariffs, right? He's the one that's going to stand in front of
that's good timing.
Steel workers and shipbuilders in Halifax, and he can get on the campaign trail, talk about the issues that matter, and at the same time, defend the national interest. And that's what voters are telling pollsters that they're looking for.
Yeah. I just wonder, how much of this is a surprise? I called it inevitable that Donald Trump would insert himself into this election campaign because he's been calling April 2nd Liberation Day. Well, April 2nd is next Wednesday. So, surely to goodness, the campaigns had April 2nd as a big day that they had to get ready for, they've been game planning for April 2nd. Wouldn't you say, Nick? They've been getting ready for that. Where do we want to be on April 2nd? Do we want to be in a dental clinic on April 2nd? Or do we want to be standing in front of steel workers or auto workers?
Right? We want to be standing in front of steel workers or auto workers or agricultural workers or any of the impacted industries. I think, you mentioned dental care, right? Like these files are still important, and they're part of almost a national identity now, right? When you talk about healthcare and pharmacare. And so the candidates have the benefit of that, of everyone can rally behind our dedication to, our healthcare system and say, we've got that, it's solid. Yeah, we've got policy issues to work out, but that time will come. Right now it's about protecting these massive multi-billion-dollar industries. And so, I think throughout the campaign, especially in the kind of GTA, Windsor, Quebec corridor, you're just going to continue to see candidates step in front of impacted industries.
And I would think, Ariella, that the fact that tariffs are coming, the Conservatives have game planned for that eventuality. They knew Wednesday was coming. And now whatever game plan they have has just, I would suspect, been put into motion now. Would you agree?
I agree. Everyone knew this was coming. Everyone would have had a plan for it. The reality is, the auto tariffs is coming earlier as a distraction for the Signal group.
There might be. Yeah, that's why it's. Right. You're right there. Yeah, there's a bit of wag the dog going on, I think, with this from the U.S. side.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think, I think it is just to try and fill a media cycle and to change the tune. And if you look at the details of the executive order, they are far more complex than we are actually talking about. It's any automobile imported under CUSMA will only be tariffed the value of the content made in the U.S. So that means each car imported to the U.S. has to have a detailed analysis of where each part was made. And this is inevitably just going to show how integrated our systems are. And, one thing is manufactured in Canada and another part is manufactured in the U.S. and it just goes back and forth.
Okay. We'll be right back. We will talk about some of these other issues on what I call the saw-offs. You have the Liberal campaign, which is killing long-held Liberal policies like the carbon tax and adopting some of the conservative ideas like cutting the GST on home sales. And at the same time, you have the Conservative campaign that is vowing to keep new social programs like dental care and pharmacare and child care, and talking about keeping the retirement age at 65. Just what is going on here? With our Newsday panel, Nick McRoberts with us from Hill and Knowlton. I'm still waiting for that Liberal campaign to announce they're taking the tolls off the Confederation Bridge, Nick. The Conservatives have announced that. I haven't heard anything. You're the Prince Edward Islander. You don't have any influence over that, or what?
They have announced it. The federal government committed to reviewing tolls on the bridge and the ferry at the First Ministers meeting the week before the campaign kicked off.
Reviewing. I mean, I want to see something like Tim Houston style action. I want those tolls gone.
I'll make one point on this, is that the Conservatives clearly don't care about the ferry service if they're willing to just get rid of the tolls on the bridge and forget about the eastern half of the island. So I think
it would be nice if the Liberal government could find a ferry that actually could run for a full season without stranding tourists. Okay.
I won't.
My father-in-law said if the Conservatives announce that they're going to take the tolls off the Confederation Bridge, they'll win every riding in Prince Edward Island. Now, that was like 2 years ago he said that. I don't know if that's the case anymore. Atlantic Canada's looking pretty safe right now. Looking pretty red right now, but we'll see what happens. We're here with Nick McRoberts from Hill and Knowlton. Ariella Kimmel is with us as well. She's president at Winston Wilmot. Let's talk about how conservatives are like liberals and how liberals are like conservatives. So Carney has ditched the carbon tax, and he's also killed the planned increase to the capital gains inclusion rate. Meantime, you have Poilievre saying, I'll keep all of those social programs. If you get childcare now, I'm not going to touch childcare, dental care, pharmacare. Won't change the changes that were made to the CPP. Keep the retirement age at 65. Then you have both offering, their policies are a little bit different, but GST off of home sales, both offering income tax cuts. What do you make of all of these announcements that sound a lot alike, no matter the party you're looking at, Ariella?
I have to say that it's interesting to watch a lot of the walk back on the Liberal side. I'm not that surprised that Pierre said he wasn't going to get rid of the social programs. Those are obviously, especially childcare, incredibly popular, and amongst the age ranges and the demographics that they are looking to win over. So that doesn't surprise me. But with Carney, it's like he's cynically trying to pull people into the party, which is completely out of step with the things he said in the past, and frankly, a lot of his candidates. So he makes these grand summary statements that have no meaning and provide no real guidance to specific policies. And behind him are standing the same people who attacked anyone who opposed the carbon tax as climate deniers. It just doesn't really go together. Like, I can't square the circle on his policies when he's appointing people like former Alberta NDP MLA Rodley Ola as a candidate in Edmonton Gateway, who was once a rapper under the stage name Ro Soldier, and in his songs he would call for violent communist revolutions against capitalism and glorified people like Che Guevara and Castro. So it just doesn't square.
It's art, Ariella. It's just artistic expression, I'm sure.
Well, I have the lyrics if you would like some.
No, that's okay. That's okay. You can spare me that. Thank you. I call them the saw-offs, Nick. It's like all things being equal. These campaigns on these particular issues seem to be equal. What do you think?
Well, and I think that points to the national sovereignty crisis that we're having, and that being the key matter here, and not the kind of more nitpicky policies on how much of a home can you buy before you pay GST and things like that. Okay. But what it offers Canadians, and what Mark Carney is trying to do, is say that you can have these center policies, you can have these liberal social safety nets, you can have a move towards prudent fiscal policy, and you don't have to have the conspiracy theorists and the kind of right-wing maple MAGAs that we get in the current Conservative Party, right? You can have a more traditional government that's there for you and is reasonable without someone who, wants to just be the 51st state.
Okay. Well, speaking of that, we'll jump into that and talk about Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, who's off to the United States to attend an event with right-wing influencers. I mean, big names in the American right-wing media universe: Ben Shapiro, Dennis Prager. She's already under fire for doing that interview with Breitbart. Just how wise is this? And is it hurting the Conservative campaign? Thursday news panel. Thursday. It's Thursday already. My goodness, this is unbelievable how this week is going. And 5 days into the election campaign, Danielle Smith is still going to go and attend this event with Ben Shapiro and Dennis Prager. And of course, when she gets back and whatever audio emerges from that, there could be fireworks again and accusations that she's too cozy with Trump and MAGA, and that will be tied to Poilievre, and Poilievre will be asked about it. Just how wise is this in this current environment right now? Ariella, what would you say?
I may not agree with a lot of Danielle's strategy, and I mean, a lot, but Ben Shapiro is one of the leading influencers in Republican politics, and he's actually been out against sanctions against the tariff war from the very beginning. So, he was out saying that we're the number one trading partner. They're treating us like this is not a wise move, right? So, to me, I don't think her, cozying up to someone like Ben, which being on a stage with him is necessarily bad if that can help put a little bit more pressure and influence on the White House.
Okay. What do you think, Nick, about this decision to do this?
I think you have to look at it from outside kind of a deeply politico circle and look at it from, a voter's perspective or just kind of an everyday Canadian. They might not be fully apprised of, Ben Shapiro and his narrative and kind of the way the track that he's taking within Republican circles, and what they just see is a Canadian premier going down to the States to have a speaking engagement. That's not a good look in the current climate. I think it does look a little bit different than Doug Ford going to Washington and having sit-down meetings with administrative officials. Like Ariella, I don't agree with Danielle Smith. And I think, once again, she's just kind of missing the mark on what we need at a time of, a time where we need national unity.
I mean, I wonder if this is causing friction between the federal campaign and, people in Alberta conservative circles. I just wonder if they're saying, thanks a lot, Danielle. We don't really need this because, I mean, Donald Trump is toxic right now. Poilievre for weeks now has been trying to tell Canadians, I am not MAGA. And he got a boost when Donald Trump told that news outlet from the UK, the Spectator, one of the problems with Pierre Poilievre is that he's not MAGA. And Poilievre was kind of saying, thank you. I'm not MAGA. Thank you, Mr. President. But then, a week later, you have the Premier of Alberta on tape talking to a MAGA-friendly news outlet saying, wait until after the election. Lots of areas where Poilievre and Trump will see eye to eye, could agree on whatever the exact quote was. And I would note the two columnists in the Calgary papers who are usually very sympathetic to Premier Smith. Just a few days ago, both of them, Braid and Bell, kindly suggested that maybe it'd be best if Premier Smith stayed home and, be quiet for the duration of the election campaign. But she's just not built that way, I guess, Ariella. That's just not her style, right?
That is definitely not her style. I mean, I don't know about friction between the two. I do know, there is a strong ties between, people in Alberta and the CPC because it is a generally more conservative province. But I also question, if how much this stuff really, yes, I think in the, in the context of climate, people might just read this, Danielle going down, and how much this sticks to Pierre. But you're looking at, we're 5 days in, and Pierre already has 3 endorsements from private sector unions, which is the first time a federal conservative candidate has been endorsed by them. You have, LaUna going out. You have the Boilermakers. You have the UA pipe trader saying things like, Pierre is committed to workers and he's going to protect Canadian workers. And just like one point about Ben Shapiro and Dennis Prager and MAGA, the left has framed them as this, and because they're loud and it's
10 seconds.
Zionist. So
right.
The left is going after them in a well-funded effort to push American and Canadian Jews who support Zionism out of public life. So I hesitate to get involved in that.
We got to run. They're going to cut us off. We got to run. Thank you, though, to both of you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rob.
We'll speak soon. Bye-bye. That's our Newsday panel. Talkback coming up right after the news on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. Today, the election, Trump, tariffs, and Canadian sovereignty. Here are some questions to get the conversation going today. Is Canada under attack? Is Canada under attack by the Trump administration in the United States? What would you say? You hear that question. What do you think? What would be your answer to that question? Would you answer it with a yes or a no? Is Canada under attack? Is Canada under attack? Here's another question along the same lines. Is Canada's sovereignty at risk? Is Canada's sovereignty at risk as long as Donald Trump is president of the United States? How would you answer that question with a yes or a no? Is Canada's sovereignty at risk as long as Donald Trump is the president of the United States? Give those some thought. Give us a call. Phone line's open right now. The number to call, 1-833-668-2577. You should save that number in your phone. 1-833-668-2577. We've been having these debates and discussions during Talkback for many months now about what Donald Trump has been saying about Canada, what he's been doing to Canada, how he said he would use economic force against Canada, how he has said the United States subsidizes Canada, has accused Canada of stealing jobs from Americans, stealing the auto sector from the United States. He has said the United States doesn't need anything Canada has. He's threatened tariffs and pulled them back. He's imposed tariffs on some industries, like the steel and aluminum industries. And yesterday, he said that as of next Wednesday, vehicle exports to the United States, one of our top exports to the United States, number 2 on the list behind oil, will be subject to tariffs, and more tariffs could be coming, or higher tariffs could be coming, maybe as soon as next week, April 2nd, Wednesday of next week. And he's talked a lot about how great it would be and all the benefits Canadians would enjoy if we became the 51st state. All of this happening as voters get ready to decide who should govern Canada, and a federal election campaign that is barely a week old. And we have had discussions over the last few months, and I've heard many things from our callers, varying opinions about what exactly is going on here. I don't pretend to know exactly what's going on here, but I have heard people say on this show, Donald Trump wants Canada. He means what he says. When he says Canada should be the 51st state, former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said as much on more than one occasion. Donald Trump has his eyes on Canada. Some people have called this show and they have said that they would not count out the notion of a military invasion. A military invasion of Canada by the Americans. Writing in the Globe and Mail today, columnist Andrew Coyne calls Donald Trump an existential threat. In other words, Donald Trump is a threat to Canada's very existence. I have heard these things. I'm sure you have heard these things. When you hear these things, what do you think? Is Canada under attack? Is Canada's sovereignty at risk? Now, here's another line of thinking. And it's also been expressed on this program more than once. And maybe you've heard it as well in your own social circle. Maybe you even think this is the case. Certain Canadian politicians are blowing all of this Trump stuff all out of proportion, and they're doing it for political gain. What do you think of that idea? This idea that some politicians are exaggerating the actions of Donald Trump because it will help them at the polls. Take, for example, Doug Ford in Ontario, who used the tariff issue as an excuse to call a snap election. A snap election he always wanted anyway. And Donald Trump just gave him the perfect excuse to do it. And he spent as much time on American cable news networks as he did on the campaign trail, and it worked for him. And he won a massive majority government. And now here is the federal election campaign, and Donald Trump has not only breathed new life into the Liberal Party, but has given the Liberal Party a very good chance of winning a fourth term, even a majority government, something that looked to be impossible just a few months ago. And this line of thinking goes like this. These politicians are magnifying or overstating the threat of Trump and tariffs and his musings about making Canada the 51st state to create fear, division, and anxiety for voters for maximum political effect. What do you think of that? Which is it? Which is it? With Donald Trump in the White House, is Canada under attack and Canada's sovereignty is threatened? Or is that being blown out of proportion for political purposes? Let's get the conversation going. Our phone lines are open right now. The call-in line, 1-833-668-2577. And if you've never called before, please just mention that to our call screener. We will make your call a priority. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback, and this is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Trump, Canada, and the election. We are asking, is Canada under attack with Trump in the White House? Is Canada's sovereignty at risk? Or is the threat of tariffs and all this talk of the 51st state being blown out of proportion for political purposes during an election campaign? What would you say? 1-833-668-2577. Up first in Calgary today is Karen. Hi, Karen. What's your opinion?
Hey, how you doing, Rob?
I'm good, Karen. What's your opinion?
Totally blown out of proportion.
Totally blown out of proportion.
1,000%. 2 weeks ago, I called and said, yeah, Liberals need to make this an emergency so something they can fight Trump. Well, guess who loses? Canadians lose. Because now we're going to elect somebody who's never been elected. I didn't elect Mark Carney. You didn't elect Mark Carney.
Well, he's running in an election right now, though, Karen. He's running in an election right now.
He hasn't won anything, Rob. Come on. He's been placed in this place.
Right.
He has no business running Canada. He's nothing but
if he gets, if the Liberal Party gets the most seats, then he'll become he'll be the prime minister again, and it'll be totally legitimate. There's nothing illegitimate about that.
Well, he has to win the riding that he just kicked out the other MP from.
Right.
Nepean. Doesn't he have to win there first?
Well, he'll have to win there, sure.
This guy getting blown out of the water, Rob. Seriously.
Okay, but you think though it's being hyped up, it's being blown out of proportion? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. 1,000%. And also, just because I'm from Alberta, Danielle Smith is the best thing that ever happened to us. And I can tell you, if the NDP had won the last election, Canada would be finished. Because there would be no more oil for us to give to Quebec. No more money would go there. No more equalization because Canada would be finished. Not Alberta.
All right, a little off the topic, but I'll let it slide. Thank you, Karen. Good to hear from you again. Let's go to Steve, is out in Calgary as well today. Hi, Steve.
I don't get Karen. Ralph Klein and Daniel Smith were both reporters. One was for TV, one was for newspapers. They're legitimate. Anyways, the tariffs are global. It's not an attack just on Canada, if you want to call it that. So they import 8 million cars a year, but export only 1.65. And this is why I call it a tariff reset, Because when America brings in a German car, there's a 2% tariff. When they
I don't want to get into the weeds on that stuff.
Why is that? Why
I'm
don't
asking.
you want to know the nuts and bolts of stuff?
I am asking a very specific question here.
What's your question?
Is Canada under attack with Trump in the White House? Is our sovereignty at risk? Some people are saying our sovereignty is at risk, or is it being blown out of proportion by politicians who want to use this as political gain? For political gain.
You want to keep it simple. I'm trying to explain. It's
okay, well, if you don't want to play along, Steve, don't call back. Let's go to Omar in Ottawa. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. I don't want to wander off in all directions today. Hi, Omar.
Hey, Robert. How are you?
I'm good, Omar. Sometimes it's like herding cats around here, but that's okay.
You know, Robert, it's funny how many Canadians don't know how our parliamentary system works, but anyways, to answer your question, I do think we're under attack by Trump. I think for some reason he's made it a point to really target us, and I don't know why. But the thing is, in the States, it's not a big thing. Like, no one in the States cares about what he's doing in Canada. It's only we're making a big deal because it affects us, but it's not really a big news in the States.
No, the big news in the States is this Signal controversy right now, right?
Yeah, which is a joke. You know.
Okay.
Honestly, you know, I was going to say, and just about Danielle Smith real quick, you know, if Danielle Smith is friends with Pierre Poilievre, I would want to hate to see his enemies because she just keeps kneecapping him every single chance she gets.
Okay. But so on the tariff threat, because there will be people who will say they're blowing it out of proportion. Liberals want to run against Trump. They want to make Trump as scary as possible, right?
Right.
So they don't run because they can't run on their record of the last 9 years. That's a line of thinking that is out there. What do you think of that?
The last 9 years, the Liberals' record has been horrible, and Trump has been the lifeline that they've needed. And I feel so bad for Pierre Poilievre because Trump has just been his nightmare. Like, he's just, and honestly, I'm back to Danielle Smith going on Breitbart hurt Pierre a lot because it was clear what she said. She can kind of backtrack as much as she wants, but Trump has helped the Liberals more than they've ever helped themselves. They were dead in the water. They were dead.
No doubt about that. Okay, thank you, Omar. Good to hear from you today. Yep. Let's go to Rick is in Dartmouth. Hello, Rick. You're up next. What do you think, Rick?
Hi, thanks.
Hi.
Well, for sure, it's blown out of proportion. Matter of fact, I don't think I have any superlatives that would describe how far out of proportion it has been blown. And I say this because back in the 1980s, we didn't have free trade. We had the Auto Pact, which seemed to work pretty good between both countries, but there was no free trade. I paid duty on everything, and it wasn't called a trade war. So I think this is definitely, without any stretch of the imagination, the best thing that possibly could have ever happened to the Liberals. It's the single most important issue that the media has been pushing, and I'm not blaming you. But every day, the rest of it is pretty clear. Even our own local station here, it's nuts. And as far as a physical threat, sovereignty, that's just it's insane.
51st state.
That's
we're going to be the 51st state.
No.
Going to use economic force. Going to use economic force against Canada. Crush our industry. Crush the auto sector in Canada. People are saying it's putting our sovereignty at risk. Existential, it's called in the Globe and Mail by the top political columnists in the Globe and Mail.
Existential means end of life. So you're saying that it's the end of Canada's life.
The end of
what that means.
The existence of Canada. Yeah.
The existence of Canada. Okay. That's where the word comes from.
Overdone.
And I just think that's nuts. It's nuts.
Nuts. Okay.
And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Well, because we are members of NATO, and it would force. Certainly economically, the United States is not going to be able to hurt us that much. They're going to hurt us, like Ian Lee said. Trump will be more peeved off at Carney than at Poilievre, for sure. And who knows what he'll try. But eventually, the rest of the world is going to be more important to Trump than Canada.
Okay, thank you for your call, Rick in Dartmouth. Join the conversation today, 1-833-668-2577. I'm Rob Snow. Trump, Canada, the election, we kind of have two narratives going on here. One is Canada is under attack because of Trump, and Canada's sovereignty is at risk. What would you think of that? Would you say yes or no? Yes? Yes? Canada's sovereignty is at risk. We're under attack by the U.S. administration. Narrative number one. Narrative number two, all of that stuff, the 51st state, all of that stuff, it's being blown out of proportion for political gain during an election campaign. What do you think? 1-833-668-2577. Wayne in Calgary, thanks for waiting. Wayne, you're up next.
Hey, Rob, I got 3 points. First of all,
Sure.
I think both of your concepts can be true at the same time.
Okay.
And I really do believe that the Liberals right now have more to gain in keeping this going and not wanting to solve it. First of all, I heard Tom Mulcair on one of the major TV news networks yesterday. I'm pretty sure it was him. I don't want to actually say it was him unequivocally because I can't for sure say it was him. It might have been somebody else.
Okay, what did he say, whoever it was?
Reduce the if Carney was smart, he would reduce the tariffs right now to zero across the board. Even if they are zero, they're not really zero because there's taxes and that types of things in how those are made up. So he would reduce that to zero and then basically say to Trump, okay, we've reduced it to zero. Now what are you going to do? And play Trump for what that means. The other thing is that the Liberals and the same U.S.-Canada cabinet that's sitting down right now today, they're the same folks that heard Trump while he was running say tariffs, tariffs, tariffs. I'm going to invoke tariffs. And surprise, we've got tariffs. They were caught flat-footed. They didn't know what to do. It's just a reminder of the ineptitude of this whole Liberal government.
Okay.
So, and the other point was a Danielle Smith thing, and I support her and 100%. I don't think, you can say on one hand when Trudeau was there, you go ahead and get into the U.S. media, and then when you do, you're criticized for that.
Right.
So,
that was her point.
Now I think they're using that. They're also using that. The Liberals are. They're also using that as a focal point to kind of make
that's the way.
worse,
sure,
right?
Their narrative is that's the way the conservatives are. Look, they like to, they hang out with the MAGA people. Yeah, I got you, Wayne. Thank you. Yeah, good points all around. Thank you. To Bridgewater, Nova Scotia. Not a lot of time. Paulette, why don't you just hang on? Because if I bring you on now, you'll only have about a minute or so, and that's not fair. I want to give you a little more time than that. It's an important topic today, so just hang on the line. And we'll be right back after the latest breaking news. And you can join the discussion. It's very busy today. The phone lines are ringing off the hook, so when you hear somebody hang up, that's a good time to call. It means there's a free line. 1-833-668-2577. We'll be right back on Talkback on News Radio.
No.
We've been asking, is Canada under attack with Trump in the White House? Under attack so much so that Canada's sovereignty is at risk and it faces an existential threat? Or is all of that overblown and being used by politicians for political purposes during an election campaign? What would you say? 1-833-668-2577. I believe we have Paulette on from Bridgewater, Nova Scotia today. Hi, Paulette.
Hi. I think he's interfering with our election. I have no doubt of that. But if you noticed, he's given turfs on everybody, China, everybody. But what he did to us was saying about the 51st state. I think he's trying to throw us off. I don't know how to explain it. If he wouldn't have said us the 51 state, we would have took us the same as any other country, like what he's doing to China and Europe and everything, and Greenland and the Panama Canal. He's interfering with everything to try to, I think, to get everybody confused. But where he hit us with the 51 state, that made a little bit of difference to the rest of the world, the same as it made a little difference to Greenland.
Okay. But do you think our sovereignty is at risk right now with this president in the United States, or is that blown out of proportion?
I honestly, I don't know. I don't know because nobody understands.
Fair enough.
I don't think everybody understands him. Do you? I mean, really?
No.
He likes being on the news. He likes us talking about him. And I think in a way we should be just talking about, instead of him, because wasn't this unusual? Wasn't he supposed to just hit us on April the 2nd and not with the turf now? Or was it always, did he always say he was going to hit us with this turf now?
Well, he's kind of, he's pre-announcing what he's going to do on April 2nd, but the announcement wasn't expected until April 2nd.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's what he would do. He's trying to upset the apple cart, so our prime minister and everybody can't concentrate on Canada, and that's what they need to do, is not concentrate on Trump. Trump's going to do what Trump's going to do. Concentrate on Canada, get their ducks in a row, and don't listen to this man, no matter what he puts out, because he's trying to scare the world.
Gotcha. Okay. Paulette, well worth waiting for. Thank you for waiting there through the news. Appreciate that. We have a free line available there for you, 1-833-668-2577, 1-833-668-2577. David, I've lost track here. Who is up next? Is it Alan in Calgary is up next?
Yes, it is.
Yes, Alan in Calgary. Thanks for calling, Alan. You're on the air. What's your opinion here, Alan? What would you say?
Hello, Rob. First-time caller, but
I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
First of all, can I ask a question that Canadians need to ponder during this election?
Sure.
Why do we have tanker bans on the West Coast, but not on the East Coast? You know, the election coming up, that should be asked of our politicians.
Okay. Good. Fair enough. Okay.
And regarding Trump, he reminds me so much of my soon-to-be 3-year-old granddaughter. You know, when she's throwing a tantrum and not getting her way and pulling her little hissy fits, I'll just ignore her. And, you know, within 10 minutes, she comes back all cuddly and looking for a hug from Grandpa. And I think we have to treat Trump this way. All this rhetoric and baloney that he's throwing out there daily, nightly, in the middle of the night, his raving tantrums on social media, like, just ignore it. It has to go away. Our politicians have to let it go away. An earlier caller said, let's not retaliate with retaliatory tariffs. Let's just let them sink themselves, go into their own little hole, and they're going to come
but
back.
Do you think we are under attack in this country so much so it threatens our sovereignty, or is that overblown, exaggerated?
I think it's overblown and exaggerated. You know, we have other options in this world. We have. You know, we've handcuffed ourselves to be more of a world leader than we are today under the current government. We have the tools, we have the resources, we have everything. We don't need to be bending a knee to this ridicule going on right now with the U.S.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Alan. Yep, gotcha.
You.
Loud and clear. Thank you. Yeah. Russell in High River on the air on Talkback here on News Radio. Hi, Russell.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm good, Russell. What do you think?
Well, I think it's blown out of proportion. I think it's the Liberals. It started when Trudeau went down right after Donald got there and they had that meeting. And he said, Donald said, I'm going to put tariffs on. I said, oh, you can't do that. It's going to kill Canada economy. That's when he all started. Well, then you should be the 51st state. That's where it started. And the Liberals just built it on and built it on and built it on and built it on. And they wanted it because up until then, there was zero chance of them becoming reelected. And, the main reason we can't handle tariffs is because the Liberals wrecked our economy. They've done nothing but drive money away and everything. And the only savior they got is Donald Trump and this 51st state.
Okay, so do you think they're blowing that out of proportion, making that more than it actually is in order to gain a political advantage?
Well, it's not just them. It's also and don't get this wrong, it's the Legacy News in Canada that is sponsored by the Liberal government. Is even making it worse. Every time I turn around, he wants, why would a Republican want a country that's basically a bunch of liberal Easterners that think that liberals are the only way to run. He doesn't need more Democrats down in to vote against him, because that's what we got down east is all Democrats.
Right. So you don't think it's just politicians who are blowing it out of proportion? You think the media is kind of blowing it out of proportion as well? I don't know if it's planned, but
plan. I'm sorry. It sounds like, and I know you're great. You're honest. At least you have the integrity to say.
Well, I'm just telling you, nobody, Mark Carney's not calling me in the morning and saying, "This is Rob. This is what I want you to talk about today." Okay.
He has to wait on hold like I did.
Okay. Russell, good to hear from you, Russell. I have to wrap it up there. I hear what you're saying. The media in cahoots, but whatever. I don't think so. Let's face it. A lot of people in the media and in politics couldn't organize a one-car parade, sir. 1-833-668-2577. It's Talkback on News Radio. Vivian in Calgary, you're on the air. Vivian, hi there.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for the call.
You're welcome.
I have just a few comments about Trump that I absolutely agree that he wants Canada. Maybe not all of it. He wants our resources, that's for sure, the water, the oil, lumber, etc. Not too sure what he plans on doing with the rest of it. I don't know if our sovereignty is totally at risk. I think he's going to make a really good try at it. But really? I agree with one of the other callers that said we are a member of NATO. We do have our own military, and I think our NATO allies would certainly come to our aid if it came to a military campaign on his part. But I think going to the tariffs, I think he started all that, until we fix this so-called fentanyl flow to the United States, which was obviously, I think, a big smokescreen because there is no fentanyl flow. But I think he would keep on doing that until, I don't know, when he thinks he could take over. But I think he does it, number one, because he loves to brag about everything that he has done, and he loves to show off. I was looking at the photographs of the Oval Office recently, and it's just covered in gold frames and ornaments and whatnot. And he's just, in my mind, obviously just a very greedy man. He wants it all. He thinks he knows how to deal, and he just wants it all. And that's kind of
very interesting. Okay, Vivian, thank you. Thank you to Derek in Taber, Alberta today. Hi, Derek.
Hi, Rob. How's it going?
I'm fine, Derek. What do you think?
Good. Well, I think that it's just being blown up out of proportion for political gain.
You do? Okay. Why do you say that?
Yeah, that's my opinion. Well, just because it's going on as you let it, right? Based on, what's happening or what's being done, and doesn't appear to be as much back and forth between the leaders as could be.
Okay.
Right? I mean, if it's that big of a problem, why didn't our Prime Minister go to the U.S. to talk about the tariffs and that kind of stuff?
You mean Mark Carney, the new Prime Minister, Mark Carney?
That's correct.
Why didn't first order of business, let's go try and get a meeting at the White House, sit down, talk about these things? Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Going to Europe and stuff as the first thing, right? Like, that's important. I may not have got anything out of it, but at least it looks like you're trying.
Okay, Derek, thank you for your call. Derek thinks it's being blown out of proportion, all this stuff. What do you think? Neil in Waterloo. What do you think, Neil?
Yeah, I agree. I think things are being blown a little out of proportion. China's put 100% tariffs on us, and we've never heard anything about that on the...
Not a peep.
That's right.
Not a peep. Yeah.
So, Carney did get his security clearance, so why isn't he naming the people that were involved in the foreign interference? We are in an election.
Well, yeah, the kind of a side issue for today, and again, like I've told previous callers, I won't be wandering off in all directions here, but you have heard this. We're under attack. Our sovereignty is at risk. This is an existential crisis with this man in the White House. So
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think
you don't
Trump's
think so? Okay.
No, I think Trump's just playing a game, and that's all.
Just playing games. Okay, thank you. Good to hear from you. We have some lines available, 3 lines available there. 1-833-668-2577. You can join the discussion on Talkback here on News Radio. It's day 5 of the election campaign. By the way, it's only day 5. Long way to go, yes, but it is a sprint, not a marathon, a 36-day campaign. We had been expecting in this half hour to hear from basically all the political leaders. Mark Carney, Prime Minister Mark Carney, speaking after his cabinet meeting in Ottawa. Pierre Poilievre is out in Coquitlam today, campaigning on the West Coast. And Mr. Singh, Jagmeet Singh of the New Democrats, he's in Windsor. He's speaking right now, as a matter of fact, David.
So if they get rid of their footprint, they're not creating jobs here. They're not selling in our country. They're not selling in our market. We also have to make it very clear that as a nation, as a country, we're going to take care of our workers. So workers need to know that we're going to immediately put in place an EI that's going to cover their wages enough so they can keep their homes and pay their groceries and pay their bills. We got to make that happen. And to incentivize, you know what we need to do is we need to build Canadian, we need to buy Canadian, and we need to drive Canadian. So we got to retool our manufacturing sector so we can build vehicles entirely tailpipe to headlight in our country. To build up a more resilient automotive manufacturing sector, that's something we've got to do. We also got to encourage people to buy Canadian. So what we're proposing is that if you buy a Canadian vehicle, we'll waive the GST entirely on that vehicle to incentivize people to buy Canadian.
Okay, that's interesting. So that's Jagmeet Singh. It looks like he's at the Unifor headquarters in Windsor. Unifor is the automakers union in Canada. Let's get right back to the phones. We've been talking, is Canada under threat to the extent that our sovereignty is at risk because of President Donald Trump in the White House? Or is the threat of tariffs, the talk of the 51st state, is all of that being blown out of proportion for political gain because we're in an election campaign? What would you say? 1-833-668-2577. Jan in Cambridge, I understand it just happens to be you're the mayor of Cambridge, Ontario. Is that right?
I am. Correct.
And I'm sorry, your name again is?
Jan Liggett.
Jan Liggett, mayor of Cambridge, Ontario. Okay.
I am.
Where you have auto manufacturing, right? In Cambridge, Ontario.
I do. So I'm not just the mayor of the community that has auto parts and Toyota here. I'm also on the Auto Mayors Caucus, which are all the mayors who have auto manufacturers in their communities. So that's for Ontario. I'm also on the Ontario Big City Mayors Caucus.
Okay.
And we have a task force that also is looking at tariffs.
Okay, very interesting. Very interesting, Your Worship. So I must ask you, because our time is tight. We only got to have a couple of minutes here. So what do you think about this? Is this all this talk about tariffs in the 51st state, is that all being blown out of proportion? Or are we really under attack here in Canada?
I don't believe so. Any elected official, I would say the majority, unless you're, maybe 500 people in your community, we're all very concerned and worried about this because we are hearing from our retail outlets, our suppliers, our manufacturing facilities, everybody, that they are very concerned and they're holding back on investments or whether they hire more people. So it's very much affecting us. I'm nonpartisan. As a mayor, I don't belong to any party.
You have to work with everybody from all the parties anyway. I get that.
I have no skin in the game. I'm going to tell you that the federal parties are very concerned about this. There's none of them doing this to get elected. I'm sure they would rather this not be happening right now because it's extremely stressful. When we have a high-functioning sociopath next door to us running a country, we are at risk. I don't know if you've ever seen the show H2O, which was a Canadian series that happened quite a few years ago, but it is exactly what is going on right now, where the United States came in to take over our water. It was a very, very well done movie. It was a series. I think there was a series on it. It was quite a few years ago, but it actually.
So you think we should take it seriously? You think we should take it seriously? Absolutely. Not being blown out of proportion. Okay.
No,
all right.
I don't think so. It's happening in my community. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate your unsolicited call today, Madam Mayor. Great to hear from you. Bye-bye. Yeah. Right out of the blue. You never know who's going to call Talkback. Jan Leggett is the mayor of Cambridge, Ontario, and that's it for hour number 1. Hour number 2 of Talkback right after the latest breaking news.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
So we've been talking about Trump, tariffs, Canada, the election, all that stuff today here on a Thursday Talkback. Welcome to hour number 2. I'm Rob Snow. Is Canada under attack? Is Canada's sovereignty at risk? Or all of this talk about tariffs and making Canada the 51st state, is all of that being blown out of proportion because it's an election campaign? What would you say? 1-833-668-2577. Jody in Calgary. Hi, Jody.
Oh, hey, Rob.
Hey, Jody. What do you think,
Good day
Jody?
today. March Madness starting back up, and we got baseball and hockey. Awesome.
I wonder if the Blue Jays
Canada's
are going to be any good. Sorry,
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I was just wondering because I'm going to watch that ball game after I get off the air. I wonder if the Blue Jays are going to be any good this year. So,
Oh, yeah, they're playing Baltimore. I don't know, Rob. It's going to be I hope it won't be like last year, but
yeah, let's hope not. Yeah,
we hope so.
Let's hope not. Yeah, okay.
I
Anyway,
think Canada's
sorry, yeah.
sovereignty, like, to be honest, whatever has been is not. We don't have sovereignty right now because Trudeau destroys our sovereignty by dividing Canada when he was prime minister for 9 years.
Okay.
As in, like, Trump, whatever. I think it's all like a bunch of like political, like, BS.
Okay.
And,
Do you think it's being blown out of proportion?
Yes, I think it's very blown out of proportion, and I think, excuse my language, but I think the Liberals have a horseshoe up their arse because this is the only reason why they're leading in the polls, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, Jody. Thank you for waiting. Good points all around, I guess. Dan in Calgary as well wants to weigh in. Hi, Dan. Thanks for calling. You're on the air. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, well, I think there's a little bit of political gamesmanship on any current event that you have to spin into your favor, and I think it is certainly helping the Liberals a little bit. But to say that that this shouldn't be taken seriously or it's being blown out of proportion, I think is a little bit, well, it's irresponsible, I think.
Okay. Why do you say that?
I mean, as we can all see, I mean, Trump does whatever he's going to do, and he does some strange things for sure, but he's certainly watching what's happening around the world. And if we use Russia and Ukraine as an example, you know, he's got to be considering that people aren't actually going to step up to the plate if he intends to actually just step in. Maybe he's going towards a path of least resistance with Greenland, you know, and not focusing on Canada right now. But I think that all changes very quickly.
Oh, really?
You could look at Greenland maybe as example of Crimea, and if that works, then I would say everybody better have their heads on a swivel for sure.
Really? So you have actually given thought to the idea that there could be a military invasion by the Americans?
I unfortunately have, yeah.
You have? Wow. Okay. Thank you. I suspected that might come up today, Dan. Thank you for sharing that. It's the first, you're the first person really today who's expressed that opinion. Very much in the minority, though. Thank you, though. Good to hear from you. Dan Veer up next in Calgary. Hi, Dan Veer.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Dan Veer. What do you think?
Hey, I always think it's blown out of proportion, just for political gains. So even today's rhetoric, like when they say he was forced to go. So I don't know what was new. Like these tariffs were announced a month earlier. They were actually implemented and then taken back. And then what was the force? Like this was coming anyways, right? And so you're telling us that you're on one side you're saying that this is the most important issue, and on the other side you haven't talked about it in your cabinet like up till today. Like you probably, I don't know if they're working in tandem with Trump, maybe he announced it to help liberals. So why don't?
Well, I don't know. Some people have their suspicions. Let me just throw this out there because it's out there and it's on. Well, it's a social media thing, but I may as well throw it out there. Okay, where was Mark Carney yesterday?
I heard in the news today it was in Ottawa.
Yesterday he was in Windsor. What was he announcing? $2 billion. I have $2 billion. I'll create a $2 billion fund to help what? To help the auto sector. What happened a few hours later? Tariffs on the auto sector.
Okay, I don't know. I don't know
right?
what you're coming at, so I don't know.
Did he have it? Was he tipped off? In other words,
I don't know. You think he just announced?
I don't know.
Prepared the list in half an hour?
I'm saying he was announcing aid for the auto sector before the tariffs were announced on the auto sector.
Oh, okay. I know what you're saying. Okay, I don't know, man.
I don't know either. But these are things that people are posting and sharing and whatever.
That they have basically people were fed up with the devious and hideous things that liberals have been doing all through. And if Mark Carney is going to do the same, then where's the change? He's on one side, he's saying that he's bringing the change in his new leadership in the liberals, right? If he wants to go with the change, then why doesn't he have more transparency, right? So I don't know. This is I don't know.
Okay, Dan, I know it's hard to keep up with it sometimes. I'm right there with you, buddy. Thank you, though, for your call. We'll stop here, and then we'll come back. More of your calls. Couple of lines available there. It's been very busy today, again, on Talkback, as we follow all of these developments here on day 5 of the federal election campaign. And Trump was already, a big issue. Even more so today, just amplified even more today. Let's go to Cambridge. Again, Rob is in Cambridge. Hi, Rob.
My brother from another mother. How are you?
Oh, hi, Rob. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
We missed you for the week that you were gone. By the way, Rob, nobody ever gives kudos to maybe one of the greatest call screeners I think I've ever spoken to. The lady literally makes you smile as you speak to her.
Oh, yeah. She's fantastic. Andrea.
What a wonderful person.
Absolutely.
Person.
Yeah.
We're sitting here today thinking that politicians would use fear as a tactic? Really? No, they wouldn't do that. The Liberals have gone up 22 points, all because we've stopped talking about tent cities in every part of Canada. The GDP, the worst in the last 10 years, 0.05. Our money's dropped down the toilet. We have no foreign investment coming into the country, and we have fentanyl coming all over the place because we can't check any of the rail cars. We don't check anything at ports, and we wonder why the Liberals are using this as a fear tactic. It's us to blame. I said this to you before.
Okay.
It is misinformed Canadians that like to keep their head in the sand and think that we're just wonderful, polite people that say sorry all the time.
Okay, so our sovereignty is at risk. Trump poses an existential threat. You don't think so?
Yeah. No, come on, give me a break.
Come on. I'm just asking the question.
The guy is a master, a 4D chess master, and maybe one of the greatest trollers on the planet. What he is tired of is being the sheriff from around the world and living by the rules of after 1945. Nothing's changed. Tariffs have been around all that time. Why? To help the European Union? What? To recover. Now the states are saying, hang on a second. I walk around, I'm your sheriff, and you guys do nothing for us, and we get tariffed left, right, around the world? He's talking about free trade. He's already agreed he would take all tariffs off, but we don't want to do that. So we want our cake and eat it too.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Rob calling from Cambridge today to Calgary. John up next on Talkback today. Hi, John.
Hey, Rob. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome.
Couldn't disagree with Rob more. And
okay.
I think the apathy on this is frightening me. We absolutely should be concerned. And I think word sovereignty is, strong, but financial independence, right? We've got to understand that if we lose jobs to the United States, which is our biggest trading partner, they will be extremely hard to get back. In fact, we won't get them back. So we are looking at economic catastrophe, and if we don't take this seriously, take tariffs or whatever taxation you want to look at seriously, we're in a whole pile of trouble. I'm no Liberal fan, but I am pleased that Carney went to Europe to try and drum up some more markets. But everybody that listens to your show, Rob's got to understand, if we lose jobs, Canada's a very expensive place to do business. If we lose jobs, they're probably never coming back. They'll go somewhere else in the world in a global economy. So we have to take this absolutely seriously. Are we under threat? We absolutely are. Get your head out of the sand, people, and deal with this seriously.
All right, John, thank you for your call. To Peter in Langley, British Columbia today. Hi, Peter.
How are you?
I'm good, Peter. Yeah, what's your opinion here?
Okay, I would say that what little sovereignty Canada has left is most certainly under threat. And I would say that a lot of people are saying that this is a trade war, and I disagree with that. Some people say it's an economic war, and I think that's probably closer to the truth. But if you drill a little bit deeper, we're actually in an industry war. And what I'm getting at here is the threat is the ebbing of our industry as companies look down south and they see greener pastures down there. They're slowly going to pack up and leave. And when your industry leaves, there goes the jobs, there goes the wealth of the country, and what have you. And I think that the tariffs are not the biggest threat that we face. The biggest threat, I believe, is the American government the reduction of the American government and the ability of them to lower taxes. And when our companies up here see, you know what, why go through all this fighting of crossing the border, and the fighting with the federal government that can't get its act together, the provincial leaders that can't get their acts together, let's just go down south, we'll make more money, and we don't have to fight. And I think that's the biggest problem that we face.
All right, Peter, very interesting as usual. Enjoy your call. Did you want to add something there?
Yeah, just one last thing. And
sure
people are
yeah.
fixated on Trump. And it's not just Trump. It's the way the American government is going. The whole American government is looking inwards to save itself in the last flailing of their empire. And this is going to continue way, way beyond Trump. And I don't think the Americans can be trusted with a New Deal. Like, I don't understand why we should negotiate a New Deal with them, because they're just going to break it and do whatever they want anyways. So we're pretty stuck.
Stuck. Okay, Peter, thank you. Thank you. 1-833-668-2577, 1-833-668-2577 as we talk about Trump and tariffs and Canada and the election and our sovereignty and the whole thing. Join the discussion. We love to hear from you. This is Talkback, and Ricky up next in Calgary. Thanks for waiting. Yeah. Is it Ricky? Yeah.
Hi.
Ricky's next? Yeah. Hi, Ricky. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm just going to quickly bring up some issues that I think we need to be concerned with. And yes, I think we are under attack.
Okay.
I'm thinking of a president of the United States talking this language of tariffs and nonstop threats that he's been cheated, or he feels that he's been that the United States hasn't been dealt properly. And
yes.
So he's using a language that isn't making us neighbors.
Okay, well, let's listen to what he said yesterday, because it's very interesting you say that, because I kind of keyed in on this. He said sometimes our friends have been treating us worse than our enemies. I thought that was quite remarkable. David, play the clip there. I can't remember if it's the first clip or the second clip, but let's play it anyway.
For doing business in our country and taking our jobs, taking our wealth, taking a lot of things that they've been taking over the years. They've taken so much out of our country, friend and foe, and frankly, friend has been oftentimes much worse than foe. And this is very modest.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, that's good, Dave.
Yeah. You just reminded me, your comment reminded me of what he said yesterday. Sorry to interrupt there, Ricky. Go ahead.
Yeah, and let's not forget all the indictments. He was up and was put on hold because he had a campaign. I mean, he conducts himself in his own mind and his own. It's almost like a dictatorship. I mean, why would he talk this nonsense to Canada in this way and threatening us with all this stuff? I'm not quite getting it, and this language that he's using isn't making friends here.
Okay.
And there's a lot of
well, I think some people are saying it's a negotiating tactic. It's about a way to get concessions, specifically on trade, and that this idea that our sovereignty it's being blown all out of proportion. What do you think?
It's not being blown out of proportion.
Okay.
And
here's
my last statement.
Sure.
He is going to starve us out. He'll
starve us out.
Do that. He can starve us out. We can sit here and think that this is all BS, but I'm thinking if he gets things his way, he's going to try and starve out our industry, and we're going to be in a situation where he's going to do his annex thing. So I don't think we should be ignoring this kind of talk that he's putting on the Canadians, and we're ignoring it and saying there's no threat. I'm saying there is, and I think he'll just sit back, and he said this. We'll just starve him out. We're not going to use any military action against Canada, but he will starve us out if he wants.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Interesting points you make, Ricky. Yeah. A lot to think about there. James up next in Alberta. Hello, James. Sorry for making you wait there, James. Sorry about that.
Can you hear me good enough, Rob?
Yeah. Hear you just fine, James. Go ahead.
Yeah. I absolutely think that he's threatening Canada's sovereignty.
You do?
And I was
okay.
listening to your previous callers as the mayor of Cambridge, Ontario, made perfect sense to me about how Canada is being threatened, and our liberal and conservative politicians really don't want the tariff idea. They just want to try to become prime minister on their own terms. But I do believe Trump is a real danger to Canada, and the mayor of Cambridge, like I said, described him as a sociopath, and I up the definition of a sociopath and applies for all 10 items. And are you still there, Rob?
Yep, still right here with you. Yep.
And one of your previous callers, about an hour ago from Alberta, I know this is slightly off topic, but she, Neil Smith, is the best thing that ever happened to Alberta. Yeah. And I would say the opposite is one of the worst things that's ever happened to Alberta, because he's been caught lying in a healthcare scandal. And that's about it for me, Rob.
Okay, James. Thank you for your call. And let's go. We have time. Let's go to Wayne in Calgary as well. Wayne. Hi, Wayne.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, Wayne. What do you think? What's your opinion today?
I don't think Trump is really a threat to Canada. I think our own government is more of a threat. Our GDP, if it wasn't for Alberta, would probably be in the negative. We've got a carbon tax that's decimated the economy in Canada. I don't care who gets elected out east. I'm from the west. I hope Carney gets elected, and then maybe people in Alberta will wake up and we'll separate from Canada. I'm not saying join the U.S. I'm just saying get out of Canada. We send way too much money to the east, which is by our liberal government forcing us to do that to Ontario and Quebec, and to the east. They're just like welfare recipients from Alberta.
You think Alberta would be better off on its own?
Oh, all you have to do is listen to we have a delegation of people going down to talk to people in Washington to see how.
Yeah, I know all about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Talk, and hopefully we can separate. And that's what I'm campaigning for, because it doesn't matter who's elected in the East. In order to their job is to get reelected, and in order to do that, they have to suck up to the East They don't care about the West. We hustled home we're in BC. Before the last federal election, we hustled home to vote. We got into our house. We were 5 minutes away from the polling station. Got to our house. By then, the Liberals were already elected. I said, we may as well have stayed in BC. So,
okay. I can appreciate that, I guess.
Say, oh, get out there and vote. Get out there and vote. Well, in the West, it's a waste of time, in my opinion. So, anyway, have a great day.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope we don't lose you. I think Canada's a great country, and it's better together. Let's try and keep it that way. That'll be my opinion till the day I die. 1-833-668-2577.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Pierre Poilievre is campaigning on the West Coast. Today, we do expect him to make some remarks about the latest developments involving the tariff situation from the Trump administration. But when he begins speaking in English, we'll join that. He's doing a very long speech in French right now in Coquitlam, British Columbia. This development, though, with tariffs for the auto sector coming into effect next week, this was always going to be in play during this election campaign because the Trump administration has been saying along April 2nd, April 2nd, April 2nd, April 2nd. It's hammer time, April 2nd. Trump has been calling it Liberation Day. That's when all the reciprocal tariffs were supposed to come into effect. Wednesday of next week. I myself, along with David, we were getting ready for next week because we thought, well, that's going to be the big story of the election campaign. That's going to be next week's story, tariffs. Let's get ahead of that. That's why we talked about it with Professor Ian Lee a couple of days ago from Carleton University.
The best laid plans,
Right? This was always going to be a campaign in two phases. It was going to have pre-April 2nd, post-April 2nd, because you would have to think all the parties have that day circled on their calendars. And they've been game planning that. Okay, Wednesday comes. What's the announcement? If Trump does this, what are we going to do? What are we going to say? How are we going to respond? Where do we want our campaign to be on that day? They probably even thought that far. What do we want the backdrop to be? Probably want to be at an auto plant in Windsor or at a steel mill in Hamilton or Sault Ste. Marie. We don't want to be at a child care center in Scarborough or a dental clinic in New Westminster when we're talking about tariffs. We want to be around people in hard hats with machinery and, lots of Canadian flags. And we're going to talk about how unfair this is and how we need to fight back and how we need to be there to support workers, and we'll never give in to Trump, and we'll never be the 51st state. And I can almost guarantee you that was the plan from all the political parties for Wednesday of next week, because Trump's been calling it Liberation Day. And now all of those plans, if they have been game planned, well, the game plan now has to be set into motion a few days early. To me, it's just a giant gift to the Liberals. It's a gift to the campaign of Mark Carney and the Liberals, because he's the prime minister. And he can actually do stuff because he's the prime minister. He can call a cabinet meeting and he can announce stuff and he can get stuff done and he can make an address to the nation from the prime minister's office. He gets to do the role that he's auditioning for right now. And Pierre Poilievre can't do that. He can really only say what he would do if he was prime minister. It does put him at a great disadvantage, but he's going to try his best.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We knew these events were happening today, these campaign events. We want to bring them to you when we're doing our show, when they're happening, so you can hear from the leaders themselves, maybe help you, make your own decisions when it comes time to vote. Information is power, of course. Knowledge is power. We did play a little bit of Mr. Singh. He was on the hustings today in Windsor, talking about the threat of tariffs, proposing some new ideas. If you buy a vehicle that's made in Canada, save the GST. That's an idea from the New Democrats that was pitched today. We're still waiting to hear from Prime Minister Mark Carney, who's in Ottawa. met with his special Canada-U.S. relations cabinet today. That meeting is long over. We're just waiting for some remarks from him. And right now, Pierre Poilievre, who had long planned to go to BC today, is there. Now he's speaking at a sheet metal factory in Coquitlam, British Columbia. A little more of this here.
Here's how it works. You know, the previous Conservative government created the tax-free savings accounts that allow you to put aside up to $7,000 every single year. And then your growth is all tax-free. That won't change. What will change is that under my government, you will be allowed to contribute another $5,000 every single year, as long as that money is invested in Canadian companies. So this will bring billions of dollars of investment into Canadian companies who will then spend it on factories, equipment, tools, wages, and making our economy self-reliant and strong. Our economy has been starved of investment. In fact, Canadian workers get only 55 cents of investment for every dollar an American worker gets. The investment per worker in America is 28,000 American dollars. In Canada, it's about 15,000 American dollars. So the American worker has been getting more tools and more technology, and that's why our wages have been falling behind. We need to encourage investment in this country by changing the rules to make them fair, and not for the wealthy, not for the elites, but for the retail working class investors. This will bring money rushing back into Canadian businesses who will hire more people and pay more taxes in Canada. This is, we have, for example, Sean, who's behind me somewhere. I don't know where Sean went. Sean was here. There's Sean. Sean was telling me he's in real estate, and he'd love to be able to set aside more money. Perhaps, I don't know his exact situation, but perhaps he sells a rental property and wants to put the proceeds aside, and he wants to make sure that those investments go into Canada. This would give him the ability to put that in a Canada First tax-free savings account that would boost investment in Canada while boosting the retirement that he has so richly earned. He told me that
so
this would allow him to
is
save.
the campaign pledge from Pierre Poilievre today, the leader of the Conservative Party, saying he would allow Canadians to increase the amount that can be put into a tax-free savings account if he says the funds are used to support Canadian growth, if they're Canadian investments. Extra $5,000 a year could be made to investments in Canadian companies into the TFSA. He's calling it the TFSA top-up. Still ahead, remarks from Mark Carney at some point, the Prime Minister, on the tariff situation. We're back tomorrow with the Friday Free-for-All Talkback. This is News Radio.